Chapter 18. The enemy of the enemy has begun moving, but preparations continue anyway. The female adventurer who surrendered to the orcs without resistance was bound with vines instead of rope and taken away. The young noble orc had a vulgar smile on his face, pulling on the end of the vine as if she were his pet dog. The monsters following his command were also laughing. They were likely happy, because while this woman acted as a plaything for their master's mood would be improved. And so the female adventurer was dragged along by the noble orc and taken into the orc kingdom that his father had established. Even though she would soon be forced to start giving birth to monsters until she died, the female adventurer had no expression on her face. However, nobody noticed this, even the noble orc himself. It was impossible for monsters to read the detailed facial expressions of humans, and the noble orc had no interest at all in the woman's facial expression to begin with. An oval-faced man sat deeply in his chair with his eyes closed, looking as if he was sleeping. Suddenly, his eyelids flew open, and he pressed a handkerchief to his mouth. Oh, how repulsive! The bloody-smelling breath of orcs, the laughter of goblins, the cunning kobolds. To top it all off, the pigs who were under the impression that they were high-class creatures. And of course, the women who were being treated like cattle, unable to die even if they wanted to. The man had been prepared to see this. He had known what he was being requested to do. Even so, he struggled to contain his nausea. Are you all right, Luciliano Dano? No, nothing to worry about. Way. More importantly, Steward Dano, please call for the Viscount. I have something to report. Certainly, I will summon the master. I am terribly sorry, but please wait while I do so, Luciliano Dano. The butler, who apparently had happened to come by to check up on things, made a cup of fragrant black tea before leaving the room. It was likely an act of consideration, offering Luciliano some tea to ease his nausea while waiting for the master. With the wonderful aroma of the black tea filling his nostrils, Luciliano felt the disgusting scenery that had been burned into his mind start to fade away. He was careful not to forget it, however, as it was his job to remember it. Your reconnaissance succeeded. Shouting loudly about this top-secret request, a handlebar mustache entered the room. No, a nobleman with a handlebar mustache entered the room. Quickly putting his cup down, Luciliano gave the nobleman a bow. I will now report, Viscount Berno Balches. This nobleman, Viscount Berno Balches, was the lord of this region and the one who had hired Luciliano. He appeared to be a smart nobleman in the prime years of his life with no outstanding characteristics other than his magnificent handlebar mustache. He was not an incompetent man. He was your typical nobleman. My Live Dead has safely infiltrated the orc village. Live Dead. This is a special kind of undead, no, a creature classified as an undead, created using life attribute magic. It is created by casting a spell on a fresh corpse whose heartbeat and respiration have only just stopped, restarting its biological functions. Though its heart and lungs move, it is classified as an undead because it does not have a soul, but it looks no different from a living creature. It is warm to the touch, and one can detect signs of life from it using magic. It does appear to be an expressionless, flat-toned person. However, its only drawback is that the spell is directly granting life to the body, so it still requires food and sleep. Also, unlike undead, it is affected by poison and illness. Viscount Balches had hired Luciliano to use this Live Dead as a familiar and borrow its 5 senses to confirm whether the rumors were true or not. The rumors that were drifting among the adventurers. The rumors of a powerful monster haunting the forest like devil's nest that was further away from the town. For some time, adventurers venturing to the distant forest like devil's nest hadn't been coming back. At first, these were dismissed as being due to the adventurers being unskilled, but a thief acting solo had witnessed something terrifying. A noble orc leading orcs, goblins, and kobolds. In many cases, the intelligent noble orcs, who were a higher race of orcs, were capable of organizing groups of monsters, and there were several hundred of them around the world. Luciliano's job was to determine whether the monster that the thief saw was really a noble orc, and if it was, he was to also find out how many monsters the noble orc commanded. The Live Dead I am controlling has been captured by a medium-sized company led by a noble orc and has been taken to their village. The location is about 3 days' journey from the edge of the Devil's Nest. So, how many noble orcs are there? How big is their group? So far I have confirmed that there are at least 2 noble orcs, the one in command of the medium-sized company, and one that is the king of the village. However, it seemed that there are 1 or 2 more. I believe the total monster count is around 400 or 500. 3 noble orcs, and 500 monsters. Viscount Balches looked as if he was about to faint after hearing Luciliano's report. Noble orcs were rank 6 monsters at minimum, and individually superior noble orcs were even said to be capable of slaying dragons. There were at least 2 of these, possibly 4 or even more. With 500 monsters under their command, even if Balches mobilized all of the forces in his territory, the knights, city guards, and even the active adventurers in the region, defeat was the only imaginable outcome. However, I believe that the noble orcs, including the king, are not superior individuals. Of course. I mean in comparison to other noble orcs. If you would allow me to express my personal opinion, I would think that the situation could be dealt with if you were to gather around 200 C and D-class adventurers with a B-class adventurer in command. Really? As Viscount Balches heard these words, blood returned to his face that had been as pale as a sheet of paper. However, a moment later he gave a sigh. Even if that is the case, this is a serious matter. I must gather 200 adventurers, as well as a first-rate adventurer of B-class, or higher. I am uncertain how well knights and soldiers can fight against monsters. It is beyond my capabilities to deal with this on my own. I must consult Marshal Palpapek. As a ruler, Balches had the power to request help from those in higher positions in situations that he couldn't deal with on his own. If he allowed his pride to get in the way, tried to deal with this problem on his own and then failed, he would not only be disgraced, but his entire territory would be overrun by monsters. In that regard, Viscount Balches was a nobleman living up to his handlebar mustache. The noble orcs are apparently planning to move when summer comes. It seems that there is a group of monsters in the Devil's Nest that is not under their command, so they are acting to deal with that first. Those monsters are ghouls, I presume. So we have some time. Good work, Luciliano. I will pay the fee for your services to the Adventurers Guild, but I request that you still keep this situation a secret. It would cause a panic among the people. Thank you very much. Luciliano felt relieved, having finally earned some traveling expenses. He had been saving money for a long time to escape the Amid Empire and its nations, where the Church of Alda's influence was strong and the use of undead was restricted. He had decided to head to the neighboring kingdom of Orbom, and then find a comfortable city to live in. Well then, you will accept my next request, won't you? However, Viscount Balches' words postponed his plans. Around the beginning of February, Vandaliu organized the surviving ghouls of the Devil's Nest into an army to fight against the noble orcs. Normally, a king would be in a heavily defended stronghold, but Vandaliu had personally visited the other ghoul villages to convince them to work with him. The reason for that was to use the effects of the Death Attribute charm to gather the ghouls smoothly, but I wonder if I'm just some kind of handyman with the title of king. That's not true, king. By the way, our numbers have increased, so please build us some new houses, king. Yeah. Vandaliu used the golem transmutation skill to have wood golems change their shape and build pit dwellings. He lacked the knowledge to build proper houses, but he had lived in pit dwellings for over a year, so he was familiar enough with them to build them. The materials moved on their own to the places that he commanded them to and changed into the shape that he needed them to, so this method of construction using golems was very easy. As long as he had the materials, it took him less than 10 minutes to build a single pit dwelling. Oh, amazing! 10 more houses, please. King, we're expanding the village, so please build some outer walls as well. Yeah. He turned felled trees into wood golems and changed their shape to turn them into lumber. He turned the dirt on the ground's surface into an earth golem and made it move back to create holes, then began building the pit dwellings. As long as they were all in his field of vision, he could build 10 pit dwellings simultaneously. Would Vandaliu be able to make a living doing this in the Orbom Kingdom? He didn't know whether that country actually needed pit dwellings, but he was relaxed enough to wonder about these things. After finishing building the 10 pit dwellings, he began to work on the outer walls. This was even easier than building homes for the ghouls. All he had to do was build sturdy walls. He just needed to give the command and the walls built themselves, so it was finished in only a few minutes. That's our king. How splendid! King. The ghouls raised their fists in the air and began chanting for their king. Ghouls were a fundamentally lazy race, so they didn't hold back as they praised Vandalyu, who was able to quickly complete all of the difficult work. It didn't seem like they were interested in following his example, however. Why, Van? Mother is calling for you. All right. Well then, I'm leaving the rest to you. Vandalyu gave a short bow before leaving. As the ghouls no longer had to do any hard labor thanks to him, they continued praising him for a while longer. The ghouls had absorbed 4 villages, including Terria's village, and they now had over 270 members. Half of them were women, and though they were few, there were some elderly individuals as well. However, ghouls were a race whose members made excellent warriors up until they were nearly 300 years old, regardless of gender. The strongest ghouls in these villages were rank 4 ghoul warriors, and there weren't any strong rank 5 or higher ghouls like Vigoro and Zadiris, but thanks to Teria, they were all fully equipped. Armor made of iron turtle shells, possessing the defensive capabilities of full plate armor while being nowhere near as heavy. A spear with the horn of a lance bull as its tip, capable of piercing through iron armor. Even D-class adventurers wouldn't be this well equipped. Though not all of their equipment were magic items, the combat capabilities of the ghouls couldn't be judged by their rank. Humans are physically weaker than monsters and don't possess special abilities like monsters do. To defeat monsters, they rely on 3 major components. Those are their coordination with each other, their skills, and their equipment. The ghouls had obtained the last of these components. However, there was also something that they were lacking. What do you mean you can't fight properly at your age? Have you really lived 10 times longer than me? What about it? I have used my ability to smith equipment and the weapon a woman is born with to rise to this position in the world. A little girl who has never even given birth to a child should just stay quiet. Bajia and Teria glared at each other. One was a 190 cm, tall female warrior in her mid-20s, while the other was a small ghoul who appeared to be in her late teenage years. In reality, one was a 26-year-old young woman, while the other was a 270-year-old female leader who had lived an incredible life. For some reason, these two didn't get along. But the reality was that Teria and the women of her village didn't know techniques for fighting. They could not even use the magic that they were supposed to have an aptitude for other than the spells that they used in their everyday lives, let alone combat-related skills. It was difficult to imagine that they would be useful in battle. However, thanks to Teria, they were a group of capable workers befitting of the ghoul race. Though their skills weren't at Terria's level, each of them were more than fully qualified as smiths, and even now, they were creating more equipment for the warriors to use. Vivan will give me a baby. Vansama will, to this little girl. Is that true, Vansama? It's true, though not in the way that you're imagining. They were referring to how Vandalyu would deal with the problem of low ghoul fertility. But Vandalyu looked into the distance, wondering why these two were so hostile towards each other. You're being overfamiliar with Van. You are the one who is overfamiliar with him, not even adding Sama to his name. They glared at each other with sharp looks. The loud grinding of their fangs was particularly ghoul-like. The two of them had been on bad terms with each other ever since Vandalyu brought Teria back with him. In order to curry favor with the ghoul king immediately, Teria had stepped on board the carriage, saying, I have things to discuss with you regarding the upcoming battle. And when Vandalyu took his afternoon nap, she had held Vandalyu in her arms until they arrived back in the village. As Bajia came out to welcome him back, she saw this and got into an argument, and now things were like this. No, Vandalyu had a good idea of what was causing this, but he couldn't understand why Bajia was so angry with Teria, considering that ghouls had no concept of marriage. Even if she felt as if her younger brother, whom she was close with, was being taken away, he couldn't imagine that she would act and speak the way she was doing now. And why were the two of them competing so seriously over a 2-year-old in the first place? How about acting your age for once? Oh my, I apologize. Perhaps because I was originally a human, I act as if my age was the same as my physical age without thinking. I am jealous of you, since you have grown so old. All things considered, they're quite sage. Sasage. You are mistaken. They are not sagging, they are simply large. Really? Mine don't hang downwards at all, though. Teria lost her composure and began protesting angrily, and Bajia simply looked down at her calmly. Both of them were owners of plentiful busts, and in fact, Bastia's breasts were like cannonballs that projected forwards, showing no signs of sagging. You musclehead! You don't know. Van likes muscles. Well, more than liking them, I admire them. Muscles were power, and those with power were strong. In other words, if Vandaliu could get muscles, he could graduate from being one of the people who were trampled over by others. Ah, how wonderful muscles were. Whether they could hear Vandaliu whispering such thoughts to himself or not, Boggia and Teria continued their quarreling. As Vandaliu watched Teria shouting while Boggia dealt with her calmly, he could only imagine a future where the wisdom of her years would be defeated by the youngster. However, as Teria refused to give up, that future was still distant. The future where they would have a constructive discussion about how to deal with the noble orcs. When would that come? What can I do to make them stop? Though Vandaliu asked himself this question, Zadiris was whispering, try putting yourself in my position, where you have neither muscles nor breasts. Meanwhile, Vigoro was deep in thought with his arms folded, or at least he appeared to be. As the chiefs of the other villages were lower than Teria in the hierarchy, they seemed to be reluctant to say anything. You should stop them here, Bakken. Sam was unable to leave the carriage that was his body, so Saria was here in this place, saying these words to him. You wish to become a nobleman, do you not, Bakken? Then you must be able to do at least this much. I think the image of a nobleman that I have in my mind is going to go through a lot of changes. Noblemen struggle with relationships with women. It was no different in the noble family that we worked for. The conflict between a wife and a mistress was apparently a sight to behold. This topic reminded Vandaliu of the stories he had heard when he was living in Japan about the Edo castle's inner chambers during the Edo period. Translator's note, 1603 to 1868. Neither Boggia nor Teria were his wife or mistress, but him being the cause of their conflict was a fact. Vandaliu knew that he should be the one to stop them, so he stood up. Vigoro, the most combat-capable individual present here, suspected that he could fight evenly against a noble orc 1 or 2 ranks higher than himself if he had Vandaliu's support. Until the noble orc that rules the village comes out, I will leave Vigoro and Zadiris in command. We will be conducting hit-and-run attacks. I think it is questionable for a king to be conducting hit-and-run attacks, but that is indeed the most effective way to make use of your abilities, boy. However, you must prepare undead for scouting, as well as a way to communicate with the rest of us. None of us can hear the words of the undead insects or the spirits other than you, boy. Vandaliu had been inaugurated as Ghoul King, but as he had said when he first accepted the title, he didn't have the ability to command others in a group battle. For that reason, he planned to ignore his title of king and simply conduct hit-and-run attacks during this battle. Be careful, Van. Your life doesn't belong to just you. Yes, in regards to the ghoul children, my life is more than just my own. I still have more things that I want to do as well, so I will take care. Vandaliu had to learn the alchemy skill and solve the ghoul's birth rate problem. After that, he wanted to try making walnut miso and acorn miso, and he wanted to create a magic item that cast the maturation spell, and a refrigerator that used the demon light spell before he departed for the Orbalm Kingdom as well. There were a lot of things that he wanted to do for the ghouls, and there were also many reasons that the noble orcs needed to be killed. He had to be careful and not take any risks. On top of that, he had to revive Darcia and achieve his revenge. There was no shortage of reasons that he couldn't die here. Well then, let's leave in 3 days from now. Bu-bu-bu-bu-bu. Translator's note, sound of flapping wings. Several insects flapped their wings loudly, flying further and further east. There were undead rhinoceros beetles, flies, dragonflies, and ladybirds. Some of the insects among them were natural predators of the others, but they paid no attention to this as they continued flying. These were the undead insects that Vandaliu had released just in case. Their mission was to find another devil's nest for the very unlikely event that the ghouls decided that they should run away. And their other purpose was to discover what was along the way, as Vandaliu would one day make the journey to cross the eastern mountain range. Day and night, the insects flew on. Some were lost to birds and others to living insects, but still they continued. Crossing cliffs with rocks as sharp as blades and hills where terrifying carnivorous plants grew freely, they flew on. And then the insects stopped a little past the mountain range, at a section of an enormous stone wall. It was so large that one might have thought that it was part of the mountain range itself, but there were cracks in its surface here and there, and parts of it had crumbled away. The insects flew near the wall's surroundings, investigating it, and then finally attached themselves onto it. They had completed their mission. Now they were to wait here for their master to contact them. They would remain here until then. Name: Bone Man. Rank 3. Race: Skeleton Soldier. Level 100. Passive skills: Dark Vision. Superhuman Strength. Level 2 level up. Active skills: Swordsmanship. Level 1. Shield Technique. Level 1. Archery. Level 1. Silent Steps. Level 1. Coordination. Level 1 new. Name: Bone Bird. Rank 3. Race: Phantom Bird. Level 98. Passive skills: Dark Vision. Spirit Form. Level 2 level up. Superhuman Strength. Level 2 level up. Active skills: Silent Steps. Level 1. Swift Flight. Level 1. Name: Sam. Rank 3. Race: Ghost Carriage. Level 65. Passive skills: Spirit Form. Level 3 level up. Superhuman Strength. Level 3 level up. Rough Road Travel. Level 2 level up. Impact Resistance. Level 2 level up. Precise Driving. Level 3. Active skills: Silent Steps. Level 1. High Speed Travel. Level 1. Charge. Level 2 level up. Name: Saria. Rank 3. Race: Living High Leg Armor. Level 82. Passive skills: Special 5 Senses. Physical Ability Enhancement. Level 2. Water Element Resistance. Level 2. Physical Attack Resistance. Level 2. Active skills: Housework. Level 2. Halberd Technique. Level 2 level up. Archery. Level 1 new. Coordination. Level 1 new. Name: Rita. Rank 3. Race: Living Bikini Armor. Level 81. Passive skills: Special 5 Senses. Physical Ability Enhancement. Level 2. Fire Element Resistance. Level 2. Physical Attack Resistance. Level 2. Active skills: Housework. Level 1. Naginata Technique. Level 2 level up. Archery. Level 1 new. Coordination. Level 1 new.